Hello, we're the Certified Noonas, your sisters in the love of Asian entertainment, and welcome to Books, Drinks, and Chaos, a book club created because sometimes we should be reading something other than subtitles. I think a lot, or not a lot, but probably some people will be here because they haven't actually listened to our podcast and maybe be a book lover, so maybe we should say our names, age order, like always.
And what you're drinking.
Yeah.
And what I'm drinking. Okay. Hi, I'm Amanda. Currently, I'm drinking water, but I did just have a really lovely raspberry ale beer that was delightful. Water now, though.
And I'm Jessie, and not true to my name, I'm not drinking wine. I am drinking cherry Coke. But, you know, it's like the 4th, so kind of like a American celebration with Coke in a can.
I'm Natalia, and I'm currently drinking Lime Montelier, and if you don't know what Montelier is, it's basically Canadian off-brand Perrier. It's delicious. I haven't really eaten that much today, so I didn't really want to be drinking some soju like I normally would, but good.
And I'm Sky. I'm drinking water, because I always do when we're recording, because for some reason I get hacky. I don't know why. It's just what I do. But earlier I was drinking calorie-free vanilla soda, or whatever it's called. It was good.
It was like was it Zevia? I love Zevia.
No, it's... I can't remember right now.
Zevia's my favorite.
It's a really cute picture of it, though.
You just bought it because of the picture?
I mean, it tastes really good. I like it a lot. So. I don't want to be burping when we're recording, too.
Fair.
So I thought we should probably talk about why we decided to do a book club on this podcast that we normally just talk about, like, dramas and K-pop and stuff. Mainly it's because of me, because I very much wanted a book club because I like reading, but sometimes I don't, like, make it a priority, or it's, like, the first thing that I push to the side. And I noticed that in a lot of our group chats, we were always talking about some sort of book, especially like Jane Austen. Mm-hmm. So that's when I was like, maybe they'll do a book club with me. And then we're like, just put it on the podcast too. Because might as well.
We all really like books too. I mean, I think I know for me, my main thing for years has been reading prior to getting into dramas. So to me, they're actually very connected because of story. My main large tattoo is of a book, so I mean it's always kind of been my thing.
My 2 large tattoos are also book related, so yes, big into books. But we also wanted to keep it in the realm of what our podcast is. So because of that, all the books that we read will be by Asian authors. Mm-hmm. To keep it all in the same sphere.
A little genre, our own little trope.
Theme.
That's why we're here, so keep it going.
And some people's knee-jerk reaction might be, oh, that's like a small pool, especially when it needs to be an English translated work.
Oh,
maybe.
It is
not a small pool.
No. It's not. A very large pool.
And there's also really great Asian American authors right now that are putting out really great work. And I think highlighting that is kind of, essential and really great.
So for our first book, it was sort of my pick. It wasn't an intentional pick. It was just one that was really easy for all of us to get. I was already planning on reading it, so I was like, hey, why don't we read this? And it's the book Dragon Pearl by Yoon Ha Lee. So this book is fairly well known it's a young adult novel, and it's one of the Rick Riordan imprint ones where he's been looking for people from different cultures to write young adult novels about, different sort of mythologies in their own culture. So this one is Korean. We've started with a Korean novel. So as a brief synopsis,
you can pass it to Jessie.
We're gonna pass it on over.
Oh, okay. I mean, you're doing so well. Usually Natalia does all this stuff, so this is weird now. We're trading roles.
I know, I was just going on auto right there. I was like, okay, time to do something. I was like, wait. No, you're right. This is your show.
It's not my show. I made you.
Yes, it is. We're making it your show.
Oh, okay. It's me talking this entire time. Cool.
It's the Jessie and Friends show.
You also probably have been hearing a lot about this book because it's fairly recently been published. Like, it was just the beginning of this year. So it already had like a lot of like buzz around it because of that. And because since it was a new release, it kind of tends to have its name like more in articles and more people like reviewing it or talking about like a book that they wanted to read. Because I was a theater major, not a communications major. So I like things with scripts. I borrowed the synopsis of this book from Rick Riordan's actual site. A sci-fi adventure novel about Min, a teenage fox spirit, aka a Gumiho, who runs around to solve the mystery of what happened to her older brother and ends up saving her planet.
Which is very broadly, yes, an accurate description.
Yes. Very broadly.
Of it. A lot of stuff happens in it, but that's the basic, you know.
And it also should be mentioned, this is more middle grade than it is YA. She's 13 in this book, I think. She's fairly young, and it's also geared definitely like just before YA, but a book that's written well enough that I think anybody could read it, but it definitely skews a little bit younger if you were looking for an option for your younger kids to read too.
Mm-hmm. And I had my kids read it, and they quite enjoyed it. My 13 really, really liked it. My 15-year-old enjoyed it well enough, but she's super into Rick Riordan and all of his different
me too.
stuff.
I love Rick Riordan.
She was going to like it no matter what because she was going to slot it into her, her fandom. So my son, I think, enjoyed the book more than she did, but my son's also the one who watches K-dramas with me sometimes. So he's a little bit more familiar with some of the key points that were brought up and the names and stuff. Like I think even just that, like the names didn't throw him at all because he was used to the names.
Yeah, he was kind of used to it culturally, some of the stuff that was going on. So I guess from now on, we're going to be spoiling a lot of this book. So if you want to read it, stop right now, go read it, and then come back. But
we'll still be here. We'll wait for you.
And so the reason why we picked this title, as like Sky was the one to pick the title of our book club, is because we're pretty chaotic and we jump around a lot. So I'm sure there are other places that are like very structured, but we're just not that way. So we're going to be jumping around a bunch of different places and just kind of, telling you how we feel. So
like, we can't promise you a perfectly linear situation, but we can promise you a good time. And before we get into it, speaking of good times, if you would like to support this podcast, you can go to our Ko-fi, coffee.com/certifiednunas, and send us a buck or two if you appreciate all that we're doing. We have a bunch of fun stuff over there, and we have more on the way. All right, now let's get into the book.
I just finished it like a few hours ago.
So you're going to be our perfect one because it's been a while since.
Yeah, I think I read, it was over 100 pages today. So, I mean, as far as the last chunk.
You can be the one who's like, nah, you're remembering that incorrectly.
I finished it yesterday.
Okay.
I finished it so long ago I had to open it up today to remember what her name was. Because I was like,
I finished it.
I don't know what her name is.
June. Not January.
Well, so, okay. The fact that I read it today, I forgot what her name was, too. Since... she took on someone else's name for quite some time.
That's true.
That's fair. Okay.
Yeah.
I won't remember what the new name is. I only opened it to the first page and went, oh, that's her name.
I'm terrible at names, so you're not getting any names from me unless it's written down.
The lead even numerous times would say, I might forget my own name, like she said. So.
Yeah. Let's start off, I guess, try to be semi-structured with like her home planet, where you're presented with this sort of dirt farming sadness that it's like, oh, the government terraformed all these planets, but some of them they did really shitty, but now they're forcing the planets to pay to fix it themselves. Like, so
very
typical government bullshit.
Typical also dystopian novel.
Oh yeah.
So.
And it's like, her family's poor farmers.
Just started rewatching Firefly with my kids this weekend, and that's very much Firefly.
On that note, I was like, this is a very Firefly dystopian world. It wasn't, it's not like kind of what you see now where there's like a bunch of different things. It's very kind of centralized into ruralness and like still doing things even though the technology has become super advanced than what it is now, but they're still kind of basically in this world.
But only the rich people get to enjoy the good technology. Everyone else gets bullshit like everyone. Actually, I found a lot of parallels between this and the Firefly and then the movie Serenity, especially at the end when they go to the or they go to the planet of the ghosts to like.
Been out for a long time. You should have already watched it.
I'm talking about the book. Like, seriously, if you haven't watched Firefly or Serenity yet, like,
go.
Like, pause. Go watch that. Then
pause. Yeah.
Firefly and Serenity.
I'm wearing a Firefly shirt.
Okay, so welcome back to whoever just paused this and went to go watch Firefly and returned. So you'll notice that there was a lot of parallels that we could find. So, I really sort of like the Wild West, like, vibe of it. But then they also mixed in, like, fantasy with... But, okay, here's my question. So, there's all of these, like, magical creatures, okay? And they can all, like, do stuff. Like, the tiger guy, he's got, like, the fangs and shit. And then, like, the girl can put on her invisibility hat and blah, blah, blah. Why the hell does everyone hate the fox spirits so much? Like,
the foxes were, like, bottom. Like, they even, like, below humans, which you would think the humans would be below them.
That a fox spirit, like, in terms of, like, let's just say, if we're going with a governmental agency, you would think that someplace like, I don't know, the space version of the CIA would really be into having someone who can change what they look like.
Maybe it's because they're oppressing that. Like, maybe the focus was that they are actually so strong because they can do the things that they can do, especially in this book. They can turn into different things, like even inanimate objects, and transport between sexes. They don't even have to transform into their own sex. Maybe like that was their like government's way of like kind of suppressing people and like trying to make them lower so then they aren't using, all the stuff they could be doing.
Yeah, because like at some point, don't they suggest that people think that the foxes have died out too?
Yeah,
they think they're an extinct race because they're hiding themselves.
And as far as the main character's take on it vaguely seemed like she kind of thought it was because they were mistrusted. And that was kind of why they had to just always appear in human form and never really, as far as her mom's reasoning or whatever, why they couldn't be more magical.
But it just sort of felt like a fake reasoning, because you've got like the dude who can go invisible that she meets later in the military, and it's just like...
I do wonder, because I'm not like super good with the Gumiho legends, like I kind of know kind of like a little bit of the mythos, but like maybe it does seem that Gumiho do seem to be super hated by humans in a lot of the mythology. So I wonder if that's like the take that he was trying to take, like that, like trying to get that part of the mythology into this universe like that way.
Gumihos in like dramas and stuff are typically not portrayed pleasantly.
They're like sirens, essentially.
Yeah, because don't they like eat men's hearts? Wasn't
and
that
livers?
the
Yeah.
legend? Yeah, like they.
And they're tricksters.
Yeah, they seduce men and eat their hearts. Well, like fox spirits, even in like Japanese mythology, like the kitsune, were also very mistrusted. So I don't know what Asia's got against foxes.
Maybe it's just because a fox in general is like you're supposed to be sly and clever, and so it's kind of like
because even like European and North American mythologies and stuff, like
Fox in the Hen House
fables and stuff, like foxes are not trusted. They're not.
They maybe because they like in real life they're taking like all of their food and stuff, so then they can't trust the fox, and then that in turn from like that real thing becomes the story, so that the kids are like, okay, we're not going to go near a fox.
And yet the tiger spirit is who, tigers just straight up fucking murder y'all, is like the commander of a ship. Okay. Mm-hmm.
Well, what I do know about tiger spirits, I've ran across the fact that like to them, and I think I remember this in the South Korean Olympic when they did the, kind of the show when they do all the Olympic opening stuff, they definitely had a tiger spirit thing, and they would talk about how for them it was always a good luck thing. They weren't afraid of tigers. And I remember finding that very interesting because I was like, to us, tigers are pretty crazy and scary, but.
Well, maybe do the tigers actually protect humans from the Gumiho? Is that part of the mythology?
That could be it. I don't know.
The mythological characters in this books in particular, it did make me wonder about, in the real mythology, if there was a hierarchy between tiger spirits, the Dokebi, like how and then where the dragons fit into that. Like, it really made me wonder, because anytime I do run across a little bit of that type of thing, it's always talking about one creature. It's usually not how they interact.
Yeah.
So, and then I think the only show that I've seen any of those types of a drama where I saw all those critters interacting, I knew it was modeled after a Chinese mythology thing.
Whatever it was, Huayu.
So when you know that it's even coming from...
Huayu.
Yeah.
Yes. Or otherwise known as a Korean Odyssey on Netflix. So if you feel like watching more of that,
it's on there.
So you kind of wonder, like, how much is coming from the Chinese side, or if just strictly Korean mythology. I mean, so I'm just saying, in general, in stories, it doesn't seem like you often get, here's all of the critters together. It's usually, hey, here's this one doing something with the human.
I gotta be honest, I have also one minor gripe with the novel. The novel did that poor guy who helps her escape the planet dirty. He did him dirty. He was so good.
Yeah.
And got ganked.
You mean the guy in the bar? Is that
the guy who flies the ship away.
Yeah.
With her.
Oh.
They do meet.
At least he kind of was around again a little bit for a second.
Well, it's like he was real good. Like, I like.
Even when he woke up, he was like, "What about the
Yeah. What about the kid?
Yeah.
You never see him again.
Yeah. I mean, but also I can see it because, I especially if I'm gonna put myself as that age range that's reading this book, I wouldn't care about a lot of the parents in this story.
I did feel like, though, that we did miss out on some, for instance, the captain that was in the bar gambling away her entire everything.
Oh, yeah.
She seemed fascinating, and I really thought, I was like, she's going to come back around and do something, isn't she?
Well, there might be a second novel, guys, so there was,
for more novels.
That might be the case in the future.
Did the guy, the pilot who helped her escape, did he actually die, or did he just he didn't die? So, I mean, in theory, he could
come back.
Could go back.
Yeah, it could be
he could be a recurring character down the road too. You never know. But
he seemed so nice.
My biggest problem with the book was pacing.
Yeah.
I felt pacing was really, really off. Like, when my daughter started reading it, I had just finished, and I said to her, listen, I'm going to tell you something that if I had known when I started, it would have really helped me. It's a complete story. The whole book is in the story. It's not, because I got 3/4 of the way through the book, and I was like, dang it, this is just the first of 3 or something, right? I also was to find her freaking brother. Like, this is, I'm pissed off, right?
I thought that it was gonna end with them getting to the ghost planet, and that was gonna it's okay, I'm gonna be honest. I felt like they could have done more on that ghost planet situation.
Definitely.
That was really interesting. I felt like it he got tired of writing it or something, and then he just was like, okay, I gotta finish this. I just gotta get this all out, and it was just you wanted more,
When I told my daughter that, when I said to her, it's a complete story, it all wraps up. My son was about 3/4 of the way at the time, and he went, what? Are you kidding? Are you sure? And I was like, yes, I'm sure. I'm telling you. He's like, because there's only 30 pages left, Mom. And I was like,
yeah, don't worry.
Wow.
What I really do like about this book, I keep on wanting to say show because I'm just used to that, but I kind of like that it was, even though it was kind of really fast paced and the timing was weird, they did focus a lot on her developing relationships with the kids, and then also really honing in on the fact that she was doing this all for her brother. You never strayed from that, and you never got that this wasn't just about her brother in the end, and like how this like 13-year-old is like trying to navigate all this and like still being like, my brother could be dead this entire time and not knowing.
I thought it was good, like the family interactions and stuff, like even things like the way she talks to her mom and her aunts and stuff. But then when she escapes to the city and she goes to this bar and it's run by her aunt that she doesn't even know exists or whatever.
Yeah.
And that sort of aspect where it was like, oh, like this aunt seems super cool. And she's like, not like my mom and like those horrible aunts I live with. And then even just by the almost like the end of the chapter, she's like, whoa, no, this aunt is actually
this aunt is a nut. Yeah, this aunt is the bad news. No wonder I've never met her before.
Mom was right.
It was like, oh, it's this aunt. This is the gumiho that people distrust. Like, she's the reason why we got problems. Like,
and my mom used to work with her here. Oh, okay.
Yeah. Like a few things about why my mom makes us follow the rules so strictly and stuff, right?
Yeah.
One of the things I really, really liked about it was that it was all Korean. Like, all the universe was, everything was Korean. And I kept waiting, like, when she went off planet, at first I thought, okay, so the planet is Korean, right? But, like, you know, it's going to be one of those situations where everybody left Earth and went off
different planets, and then when they're together.
Something. And she gets into, like, interplanetary travel in different spaceships, and still everybody's Korean. And I was okay, nobody's showing up. Like, there's no other races, other cultures, nothing. They did hint at one point, they talk about a different, like, that there's a different federation or something. So there seems to be something, and that could wind up being, I could see that modeled after perhaps a Japanese culture.
Yeah.
Just saying.
Well,
you know.
I think that's sort of because of, like, the imprint that it's in. Like, so the purpose of it is to, like, expand, you know, North American knowledge of different cultural mythologies. So, like, you would just stick to...
It was just kind of nice. It was.
I liked it because I think, like, if I had been reading this as a young Korean American and being able to see that in, like, a book like this, that would have been really exciting for me. Like, to see, like, they would be like, oh yeah, that's exactly how my mother is. Oh yeah, that. Or, like, be able to, like, the entire time in your head not go, well, the default is this is going to be a white person. But, like, the default is that this character is Korean, like me. And I think that's a really, like, great thing, especially at that age, too, to be able to see yourself represented in that way. And I think was a nice touch.
Yeah, I agree.
And I did like how even all the names remained Korean as well. So it's not like you suddenly had even an English name. They were very Korean still, and I thought that was neat. Very consistent. I thought pronouns were neat too, the way they talked about that with the Dokebi Goblin character. And how they even were very specific about the way their name tags were in the Space Force. It indicates what gender to refer to someone as, and then they had a them type name tag. And even, like, I think there was a character to, you know, just a passing by type character, and, like, every once in a while I'd be like, oh, it's a they person. And so they would refer to them appropriately. And I thought that was really cool because it's not as if they focused on it too much, or
it was just part of the world. Like,
they built it in and they went with it, and it
wasn't
very well.
Which, to be honest, is how it should be anyway. Like, it doesn't really matter. Like, just
you don't have to
call people what pronouns they want. It really doesn't hurt anyone, and it's not hard to do.
They also again touched on how names were important, especially when she gets onto the ship with the other two or three people, and they were, like, hesitant about actually telling her their real name.
Yeah.
And, like, giving that out because it was very, like, names were important and names give power. And I think even the tiger talked about it too. Like, the commander talked about how it like held power if you gave someone your real name, which is part of the Korean culture too,
Yeah.
because you don't address people with their name. Like even like in terms of if you're like a mom talking to another mom, you're going to talk to them as the mom of the child that they have, you know, not just their actual name.
Like knowing your name, like using each other's names denotes like intimacy.
Mm-hmm.
Like if you use someone's name, you have like a relationship with them that's not just like you know them, like you're close.
Yeah, and I just thought it was a really interesting way to kind of tie that into this book too. So it was like if you didn't come from that culture, didn't know about that, that was an easy way to understand immediately what was going on and immediately why names would be important to them.
Other aspect of gender that they talked about was because the main character, when she shapeshifted into a male body, because Jung, so when she was being pretty much him for, I don't know, half of the book, if not more, they would kind of talk about that, but again, didn't focus heavily on it, but just enough to explore that a little bit within the universe.
Yeah, but it wasn't like a thing. Like it wasn't just like,
it wasn't
she's in a boy's body. You know, that sort of thing. It was just like
spend a whole chapter talking about her figuring out how to use the toilet or
no, it's not. And also, that would be very inappropriate for like a children's book.
It would, but it's also like, I mean, it like kind of drives home. It's like she's there to get her brother. Like all this other stuff is just side business in her pursuit of finding her brother and what happened to him.
So I gotta talk about this ghost. Well, it's the guy that she impersonates for most of the novel. He's like the worst, right? Like I'm not crazy. He's just kind of garbage.
He's purposely the worst, but also they mention heavily ghosts are bad. So he probably wasn't that bad when he was living.
Well, I would assume so because she in his body becomes friends with his friends and his friends are pretty cool. So like obviously he wasn't like a huge jerk while he was alive, but I think a lot of like just from the dramas we've watched and stuff, a lot of the mythology you get with ghosts is that the longer that they're ghosts, the worse they get.
And that's how it is here because there's actually two like separate. You get like the regular ghost and then the ghosts that went to that planet. Like that's they're super evil and super like mad, but like when you're just a fresh ghost, you're a trickster and you also, you know, suck the life force away unintentionally, but that's what you do.
Yeah.
And then I also found the other thing I found interesting, which is semi-related to the ghost, is like the technology that they're using is like spiritually based. Like it's not technology. Like you have to like connect with your mind and your soul, like into an engineer trance. And I kind of
like an Ava.
I know, right? I kind of like wanted a little bit more about that because they only sort of and like ghosts can mess up like the flow of the key for the ship and stuff, and I'm just like, this is like really cool. I want to know more about this. But like, I feel like maybe there'll be more about it like in future books.
She was very good with it. Like she was a natural and stuff. So like, I think that they're going to focus on her affinity with that type of technology.
Yeah, and then like honestly, at this age point of a book, it's not gonna be as expressed.
Yeah.
So it's gonna, you know, it's one of those things you're like, man, coming at it from, you know, an adult, this would have been really great, but then you're also like, but I'm not a 13-year-old who is supposed to be the intended audience.
Yeah.
That's true.
Regardless, despite not being the intended audience for this book, I did really enjoy it. Like, but I find a lot of like middle school age books are really fun. I actually, it's the first one like in the imprint so far that's like straight science fiction too. Like the others have all been sort of like urban fantasy.
Oh, cool.
So this one's like it's kind of it was interesting. I found it. I like sci-fi. But I like the blend of the sci-fi and the fantasy together.
I like the both. I tend to go for sci-fi, fantasy, sci-fi, paranormal. If those blend, that's kind of always been my target.
Same.
I like urban fantasy.
Yeah, me too. I like it a lot.
Though, it has to be done a certain way for me to really love it. But
I mean, it had a touch of that, especially when you could see like the, you know, difference between her home and her, you know, when she first gets into what's essentially Seoul, essentially, you know.
Yeah, which was like a nice sort of like showing that even, you know, there's these dirt farmers essentially out in the country, the bumpkins, and then there's like the bustling
big
urban
city.
center, like woo. But then you find out it's not that big of a city, like
No.
It's not, and also like he didn't like set it up to be so far in advance. Like they were still driving around on mopeds. Like it was very like it's just a natural.
It was very much like Luke going to the Tashi station.
Yeah.
Like, oh, gotta go to the big city, but it's like a town. Like, it's not that big of a city.
2 bars.
Oh, you're in Mos Eisley. Oh, like, no. Like,
again, it was very similar feel to Firefly with that concept of you have that sense that there are other planets that she didn't go to in this book that are like high-end, fancy, have big cities.
The rich planet.
Like, she's not on a central planet to use some she's in technology there. Or
she's in the outer rim. She's
on a border planet.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
she's
not a central world.
She's in the shitty part of the universe.
So even you know, it's kind of like even something like Little House on the Prairie or something, right? You go into town, but that's not the big city. It's not like you went to New York.
A little bit bigger.
You just like went into town.
Yeah.
I also like how the movie. Jeez, I'm so used to us talking about movies.
I know, right? It's horrible.
I also like how the book, like for the first part, you're like, okay, she's just gonna find out why her brother deserted. She's gonna find her brother. But then it's like, oh, but there's a MacGuffin now. We're adding in the MacGuffin, and now everyone's after the magical dragon pearl. Who like, I don't know, maybe like I just didn't read it attentively enough, but I feel like I did not get enough about where did this thing come from. Why is it so good?
And I meant to look it up because I just read a book that also had a Gumiho thing, and they talk about a pearl in that too. And so I don't know if it was like that was his reimagination of what the Gumiho pearl is to it, because it definitely, I don't know if I should say this. I don't know that it's a spoiler or not.
Spoiler.
No, I don't think it's actually a spoiler that the way that the Dragon Pearl is presented in this story is kind of the way it's presented as a Gumiho Pearl in the other story. So that it was a life force, and then but like also whoever touched it, it became theirs.
Or like it like chose her, because when the other guy tried to take it, the pearl was like, oh no.
Oh no.
Yeah.
We fighting now. Like get out. Like, so, you know, it's a nice little, you know, orb of power.
Or, you know, it's kind of like Sorcerer's Stone and, like, pulling out, you know, King Arthur's blade, that sort of thing, you know.
It's very, the fact that it has a personality, it's very similar to, like, in the Percy Jackson series, his sword/pen has a personality.
No, that's in the Magnus Chase book.
Oh, that's the Magnus Chase one. That's right.
Yeah, Sword of Summer has like it's like a real snarky personality, and like every time it sees another weapon, it's like, ooh, like can you introduce me to like, hey, like
I know your blade.
Exactly, like it's sort of like this sassy little sword. I would actually love because there's obviously like from the way it ends, there's gonna be.
I think so.
I would love to see sort of a little sassy personality come out of this thing.
So I felt like we've kind of broached on this. I did feel like the last 50 or so pages were very, very rushed. And in particular, I mean, once we got off the ghost planet and all these things, everything happened way too fast. Like
even on the ghost planet, everything happened.
Yeah, it was like
at top speed. Like
behind
the brother.
Actually, in between that, I accidentally. Have you ever like turned 2 pages, but like it kind of feels like it fits?
Yeah.
And so you keep reading for a little bit, and then I was like, what? I mean, it was kind of funny.
Then you realize there's like a vital piece of information that is missing from your knowledge.
Yeah.
You're like,
and the part that was pretty much getting off the ghost planet. No, it was in between her not really being in the brig, but her being back on the Pale Lightning
Yeah.
And the friends visiting and stuff. But then all of a sudden we talk to the dude that was at the beginning of the book, whatever his name was, that she hit over the head with a frying pan or whatever.
The government guy or whatever.
Yeah. And then the fact that he pretty much says a few paragraphs to her, tries to take the pearl and it doesn't work, and then it's like, boom, I trust you to give me a job. Like, that just didn't...
It needed a couple very quick. Like,
yeah.
You know, it kind of seemed like maybe he wasn't guaranteed this to be a series, because I know Yoon Ha Lee has more series and is an active writer, and he's like already put out like at least one book since this, and then he goes outside of, you know, YA or you know.
Yeah, he writes very like he writes adult science fiction.
So it kind of almost seems like maybe this was kind of his, like, this wasn't guaranteed, but maybe Rick Riordan like approached him and was like, hey, do this. And so it wasn't a guarantee until halfway through, but in retrospect, it may be rushed, but it's not like the worst thing that could have happened, you know?
It's not like,
so like
it's
like in that gray area.
Yeah, it's not like rushed in a way that makes it like bad. It's just sort of like, oh, okay. Stuff is happening.
Okay, we're done.
Sure. It actually kind of, the book that always reminds me of that is when I was in college, I took a science fiction class, science fiction literature, and we read Frankenstein. And I remember being so annoyed at Frankenstein because it would go through these pages and pages of like inner turmoil, and then when like a murder happens, it was like one sentence, and then we're back to like inner turmoil. And I sort of got like just a vague vibe of that in the second half, where it's like, oh, okay, going to the ghost planet. I was e-reading it, so I didn't have like, you know, the book when you hold it and you can see how many pages are left, so you're like, wait. No, I was reading it on my like first generation Kobo, my ancient Kobo, so it doesn't tell you anything. So I'm just like, oh man, so much more story. No. Like, okay, they're finally on the ghost planet. They've been like, you know, saying, oh, ghost planet, ooh, ghost planet.
Scared.
And then I'm just like, oh, shit's gonna go down. It kind of reminded me, this is terrible because I'm actually going to reference a really bad book, but this book is not really bad. It reminded me of the last Twilight book, where they build up this huge battle. It's going to, like, this huge vampires versus werewolves, like, battle. Woo! And then the battle comes.
Spoiler for Twilight.
One person dies, and everyone just sits around and talks
it's
through
like nothing.
their, like, disagreement. I was like, really? Like, and, like, I remember struggling. I was like, no. Like, I've gone too far into this terrible series to, like,
have this
not finish this book. And I'm like, and I finally, when I got that, I was like, you motherfucker.
I did the same thing.
You gotta be kidding me.
But this one doesn't do it as bad. As evenly.
I didn't get that same, like.
Exactly.
It's kind of like a little bit of dipped. Like, but also, if there is a second book, what if it's like intended to really kind of like push through this, because the second book is gonna just like give you more, and then like in retrospect, this stuff was supposed to be like second thought and not given into it.
If there is like a second book, and this one's like the prologue to like the real stuff happening.
And like, you know, like we think that this like part should have been explored more, but like it's really in the grand scheme of things should just be that little blurb, and then the other stuff like maybe the ghosts move from the planet like all at once, and then there's chaos, or.
And I also felt like there just wasn't enough comeuppance for the captain.
Well, so I want to interject here. I think about the Ghost Planet and even maybe revenge or all these things. I think keeping in tune with the age appropriateness of the book. I think, and every author with middle grade stuff, it definitely varies. And so some books do push that envelope a little bit more. But it's possible that that's why we didn't get a lot of Ghost Planet, or that's why,
So
we didn't want it to be super scary, give kids nightmares. Like,
it could have been testing that, like, he had more in it. It was testing too scary for the age that he was supposed to be rating for.
Or same thing about the captain. Like, would we have loved to see some stuff go down?
Yeah, but maybe.
Like, but they could have pulled like a Harry Potter centaur thing where, like, where the centaurs pulled Umbridge into the forest and then you don't know what happens, but
that's kind of what happened. Like,
yeah, exactly. But like, it happens off screen, but you can imagine what's going down. But
to me, Harry Potter, I think, is actually adult. I mean, like, it's adult novels.
I've always thought that, like, she, even though it was fine for YA, she wasn't intending it to be YA every time she was writing it, as opposed to Yoon Ha Lee was definitely focusing that this is the age group.
So I do feel like a lot of times when I wanted more in this book, possibly, or more explanation or something, in order to fit with the age group, it's like, okay, I gotcha.
Yeah. Or, like, think about, like,
bad. It was never like, oh, I'm gypped.
What would be cool?
Yeah.
Like, all the stuff on the plane would have been really cool for me.
Yeah.
Like, and if I, like, at that age, I'd be like, that's the part that I just would have loved.
Yeah.
What I do think. You go ahead.
I was just going to say, I think what I got.
Go.
Chaos.
What I got the most out of this book was a desire to read some of his other work.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
like,
same.
I was like, ooh, I want to read the grown-up version of this book. I'd like to read what he has to, what kind of worlds he has to.
His world building was very good. And, like, I love a good world building. That's all I gotta say.
As a side note, I followed him on Twitter. He is also really great on Twitter, so, like, it makes me want to read more from him, especially because he, like, always posts pictures of his cats, and they're super funny and super adorable, and you're just like, okay, fine, I'll read all of your books.
Yeah. Well, like, listen, we gotta support his books so that he can feed those cats. Like,
the way that works. So when I was talking about the end feeling rushed to me, especially with the governmental dude showing up, even within the age group, I do think that it's not that I needed a whole chapter necessarily, but I think just maybe 5 more pages with that type of exploring that just a little bit more, and maybe having a battle of wills a little bit, because to me, she's such a strong character. Min is such a strong character that, I don't know, she accepted it too readily for someone that's been through all this stuff. Even, I understand she's 13 and all these things, but I really felt like, oh, they need to, like, have a little clash first, which I know they did with the Pearl, but to me is like, there just need to be a little bit more, and they would have been like, cool. I wanted a little bit more.
I do agree. At that point, she was with her brother, and so maybe because her brother kept on, like, kind of being like, hey, don't push it, like, to her a lot, maybe she was being kind of, like, in the mindset of a more respectful younger sister, because he was there, but I definitely feel like there could have been a little bit more, especially with that character, because you didn't see him much in the beginning, and then you didn't really see him much at the end, so you never got, like, an actual, like, to him, if I were to, like, go through every character, I have a face for every character. I don't for him. Like, because you just didn't have him for so long, and, like, you just didn't get who he was supposed to be, or who they were kind of trying to be. Like, I mean, I guess maybe kind of like more of like a Men in Black CIA type person, but then also you're like.
But her first experience with him was pretty much all a lie. He's like, I was undercover, and then all the stuff he was saying about the brother deserting, like, lie. And so then come around, second experience with him, oh yeah, cool, I'll take a job for you. I'm like,
yeah.
I don't know, she's so smart. I wanted a little bit more.
With the brother too, like, just a little bit more of, like, maybe flashbacks or something, a few more. She seemed to tell a lot more stories in her mind about her and her cousin than she did about her and her brother, and he's the focus of the journey. So I would have liked a few more, like, moments that reminded her of her brother, or something that kind of showed me that relationship more.
Yeah, they kept only visiting the when we looked up at the stars together thing, which was a charming memory.
Yeah.
But it would have been nice if there were a couple others they talked about or something.
True.
So I have a question for you guys. Is it just me and my kids, or did you guys also think that her brother was going to turn out to be that sword in the captain's office?
Yeah, I had that.
Yeah, I did for a second. Yeah. There was definitely a moment there where I was like, maybe.
It has his energy, and they kept talking over and over again about how if you become an inanimate object, the longer you stay there, the harder it is to come out, right? So I thought I could see this being the thing that, like, the tiger, like, tricked him into it somehow, or, like, he became the sword to hide, and then he couldn't figure his way back out of it or something.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, my son was like, he comes to me, he's like, I thought he was the sword. What the heck? And I was like, I totally thought he was the sword too.
Yeah.
I didn't think it, but it'd be really great if that he did it intentionally, so that like everybody was like, it's the sword, and then all of a sudden, nope, he's a ghost.
Yep.
So it's like a full.
I was like, done fooled ya. Listen, you got us. We done been got. We got.
And it was a gut punch. It really was.
I wasn't expecting him to be a ghost, honestly.
No.
And I did think it was going to be like, here's a chapter or two of him being a ghost, and we will never see him again.
Mm-hmm.
And I was really bummed.
Yeah.
Because him being a ghost, like, if that was the case, then that would have been a very nihilistic vibe for the book. Like, she just did all of this work to have to exorcise her own brother. And that, like, that would have been oh, dang it.
I could have, I'm just thinking of this now, I could have seen it being a scenario where he didn't realize he was a ghost or something, like where he's on this, he thought he was the only survivor of their ship or something, and they were all ghosts around him, and she gets there and she's like, oh, dude, nope, you're also a ghost.
To tell you.
And he's like, crap, like.
So they didn't even go that heartbreaking. At least they didn't go that
far.
Yeah.
But to be specific, luckily it's not goodbye to the brother.
Yeah.
He decides to travel on with her, and I really like that. And in the way they did in the last few pages, it's obvious they play well together.
Yeah.
It kind of like he's the spy. Like, it's like, okay, that's super cute.
I mean, she just super looks up to him. Like,
yeah.
I mean, he literally is the shining star to her, the person she looks up to most. And so it was nice to at least have him.
Right. And then even going to visit mom, like, and the way the mom reacted to that, she pretty much accepted it immediately.
Yeah.
Like, well, at least he's here in some form. Like, at least I get to interact with him somewhat.
Yeah.
So it was nice. And maybe that's because the age group, too. You can imagine if it was an adult novel, it would have been probably more realistic.
It would have been gut-wrenching. You'd be, like, sobbing. You're like,
But because it's a middle grade novel, we get travel buddies. And I'm all for it.
Listen, it's turning into like a buddy spy cop movie, so I'll take it. You know what? I'll take it.
I suspect, given the way the Rick Riordan novels tend to go, we're also going to see the dragon and the Dequebi friend reappear as well. They will probably be part of the crew in future books.
There was that like kind of arc that like brought it back to like the friends betraying and back.
I think that the captain will come back because we did not see him expire. And what I found interesting was she talked about how she sloppily embroidered a fox on her little pouch for the pearl, and she was planning on doing her two friends, and then she was even going to put a tiger. And so they kind of talked about the symbolism of 4, and then the fact that they were all there on the planet when all this happened. And so they gave a lot of importance to the tiger captain. And so
I don't know if it would be the tiger captain or if, again, basing off of the more Rick Riordan, the Percy Jackson type stuff, if it'll be that they will, like a different tiger spirit will join.
Or someone
younger,
close
like
to
a
him?
kid or something, maybe. Like
maybe it would be a familiar for
kid
him.
or, something, but that there will be some younger tiger spirit that will join the crew, would be my guess. But because it's hard to write a story about kids and then have an adult character in the mix and not have them take over, right?
Yeah.
And be in charge. And that's not what you want for a middle school story, adventure story. You want the middle schoolers going on their adventure.
Yeah.
Like,
I really liked it. I recommend it.
Yeah.
It
was fun. It was a fun novel.
People who are not used to reading middle grade, though, like, you have to keep in mind it's middle grade. I do read a fair bit of middle grade. Me and my dad like those type of adventure stories and stuff because they're just such an easy, pleasant read usually. Yeah. And so I'm used to it, but sometimes it is very much, it's this age group. So people who are maybe not used to that, keep that in mind. Yes. And that's what you have to, when you review it or how you take in the story, you have to have that filter a little bit.
Yeah, I kind of just always like go into it like just when I was that age, if I would have enjoyed this story.
Yeah,
and I would have
100%.
I even like wrote this on Twitter like right after I rated it. I was like, it was a book that like I would have died for if I was in middle school, and it was so nice to be able to read it now, even if I hadn't been able to experience it then, just to know that it was out there, because it was just a fun book and it would have been so fun for me to be in that world at that age.
Definitely.
Also, what's nice is the main character is a girl, and I'm going back to the gender thing, I know, but it's not leaned heavily, she's a girl and she's doing things.
Yeah, no, like,
it's just the way it is.
Yeah, no, it's just like, she's just a girl and she's just doing stuff, like, whatever.
So, for like young girls, it would be this empowering thing without being like heavy-handed and weird about it, like it's well done.
And no romance. There's not not 13, having some like, sometimes you're reading them and you're like, this 13-year-old is behaving quite a bit like a 24-year-old.
Yeah.
Like this is not.
See, that's kind of why I like the Rick Riordan stuff. It's very age appropriate, but as the characters age in the novels, the topics and things that they do age with them, so it can so I'm hoping that's sort of the case that maybe we'll get with this too.
Do we know if we really will get, like, has it been announced that there's going to be another book?
I haven't seen anything. I want to say Goodreads. Does Goodreads have it as a number one? Because sometimes when Goodreads has a book in their thing and they know it's going to be a series, they'll put like Dragon Pearl number one, even if it's not out yet. Nope, it's just Dragon Pearl.
Yeah, so this might be all we get, but fingers crossed that there's more coming.
I mean,
and he did do a good job of keeping it. It did just come out in January. He did a good job of keeping it self-contained, so it's not like you're missing out on something, and that's a good thing. I actually applaud that.
Yeah. There's not a destroying cliffhanger that you'll never.
I wish that American sci-fi shows would do the same thing.
That's very Korean of him. That's very K-drama. Like, no, we're done now. This is over.
I appreciate it.
It definitely sits nicely on the shelf with the other, like, Rick Riordan, with the Greek gods and the Roman gods and the, Viking stuff and the other things too, like the new stuff.
Oh, there's Viking stuff? I didn't know that.
Yeah.
No. The Viking stuff is good.
I might have to partake in that.
It's the Magnus Chase series.
Cool. Well, that was our fun discussion about Dragon Pearl. We are doing this book club a little bit differently. This is not going to be a monthly book club. It's going to be an bi-monthly book club because
every other month.
Every other month, because we have lives, and it's it's hard to schedule these things. All four of us have a master list of like books that we want to read for this book club. So we decided to take one from every list, throw it up on Twitter in a poll, and see which book won. And we just finished that, and like by basically one vote, Rebel Soul by Axie Oh won. I do have like a little like blurb about Rebel Soul because I personally have not read it, and so maybe to like kind of get you super interested in it. Rebel Soul takes place in East Asia. The year is 2199. After
Another science fiction.
Yeah. After a great war, the East Pacific is in ruins. In brutal Neo-Seoul, where status comes from success in combat, ex-gang member Lee Jae-won is a talented pilot rising in the academy's ranks. Abandoned as a child in the slums of Old Seoul by his rebel father, Jae-won desires only to escape his past and prove himself as a loyal soldier of the Neo-state. It is YA, or classified as YA, it's science fiction. It came out in 2017. I did see this is a series, and there is a second book out, so we'll be reading the first book.
Yeah. And no, this is not a science fiction book podcast. It just sort of happened that way.
My pick was definitely it was not sci-fi.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure mine was like a fantasy romance. So.
Mine was fantasy realism, but more deep, not even close to this. But so it was just what happened. It won. Sorry, Wicked Fox, you didn't win. Maybe
hey, maybe next time.
Who knows? So that podcast will be out in September. So you have a long time to finish this book.
All summer.
Read it. Yeah. So
sit,
you can
sit in the sunshine.
find it. Maybe it probably is an audiobook, and maybe your library has a waiting line for it. You can put your name on now and wait, and you'll still be able to hear us talk about it. So it'll be cool.
Or if you want to go pick it up, we recommend going to your local independent bookseller, because that's who supports the artists, the writers the most. So we're all for that. And if you don't, just go to your local library. I'm sure they either have it or they can get it for you, because libraries are good at that.
Yeah.
So we support your local library.
Libraries can get from books from other libraries too.
Exactly.
So
they can
there is a way to find this book.
Just looking at it on Amazon, and it told me that you could get the audiobook for free if you signed up for Audible. You could get it for free,
there
for
you
a
go.
month or
Look
something.
at that.
So
You get a free
not
audiobook.
sponsored,
But not sponsored. Yeah,
Not
we are
sponsored,
definitely.
but if you want to sponsor us too.
but if you want to sponsor us,
you can.
As a little note on that, going to our coffee and supporting us is like being a sponsor of this podcast. So if you've ever wanted to feel like, you're really helping some content creators out there trying to just make it work, well, there's coffee.com/certified Nunas.
Well, you can listen to our regular podcast too if you want.
We're really funny.
We are really funny.
Yeah.
We are on every platform basically. And also, if you want to contact us, we're on Twitter mostly at Certified Nunas. We also have an email, certifiednunas@gmail.com. If you want to suggest things, you can go to that. We'll have all the information in the info box.
Asian author or something that you would love to see us
Yeah.
If recommendations for sure.
Yeah, and if you are an Asian author, an author of Asian descent, and would love your book to be read, let us know. We're always looking for new stuff to read. So just send us a slide into our DMs. We appreciate that sort of thing.
Well, thanks, guys. This has been a lot of fun.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know what else to say, but bye.
Bye.